I'm going to fly through this Biden speech, but I really want to hit some points here that I have not seen anyone else, not other conservatives, not really anybody else, talking about. This speech, the biggest mistake that the conservatives are making here is that they're calling it a mistake. Yes, it didn't test very well. Yes, in the short term, it looks really bad for Biden and the Democrats. The speech was not a mistake. The whole thing, the setting, the rhetoric, the arm movements, all of it was scripted. All of it was intentional. Why? Why? Because the people who are deciding Joe Biden's political operations think that it will help them in November and moving forward. This was the most significant presidential speech of my lifetime. It was not the best. It was not the most virtuous. It was not the most honest, but it was the most significant. This was as close to a declaration of war on half the country as I have ever heard from an American president, ever, throughout all of history. Frankly, Abraham Lincoln was more accommodating and was softer on the secessionists than Joe Biden was on ordinary conservative Republicans. Abraham Lincoln had malice toward none and charity for all. Joe Biden, malice for half the country, charity for absolutely nobody. He opens up the speech by setting the stage. He says, we are here in this place for a reason.
I speak to you tonight from sacred ground in America. Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is where America made its Declaration of Independence to the world more than 2 centuries ago with an idea unique among nations, that in America, we're all created equal. This is where the United States Constitution was written and debated. This is where we set in motion the most extraordinary experiment of self-government the world has ever known.
The location is important. It's not just because Pennsylvania is a toss-up for the Senate seat, though that's part of why Joe Biden showed up there. The reason why he showed up here, though, for this national address, and he says we're at Independence Hall, this is where America began, this is the home of the revolution, is because he's calling for a kind of a revolution. His rhetoric is revolutionary rhetoric. He is saying we need to overthrow the traditional American system, and we need to take half this country, as we will come to hear in the rest of the speech. Half this country is a threat to this country, and we need to ostracize half this country, and we need to suppress half this country, and we can't let half this country have any say over where the country goes. There was a little point that I didn't see anyone else notice, but it shows you just how radical the cultural revolution on the left is. Joe Biden it placed his speech in history in the long march toward greater liberty and equality and freedom for all. Listen to how he did it.
We, the people, have burning inside of each of us the flame of liberty that was lit here at Independence Hall. A flame that lit our way through abolition, the Civil War, suffrage, the Great Depression, world wars, civil rights.
Did you catch that one bit in there? Suffrage? So he says, it lit our way through the long march for civil rights, through this, through that, through the Civil War, through the Depression, through the long march for civil rights, through the suffrage. Suffrage? What do you mean suffrage? We've had suffrage since the beginning of the country. Suffrage just means the right to vote. What he's referring to is women's suffrage during the progressive era in the early 20th century. But he can't say women's suffrage. He can't say women's suffrage because Democrats don't know what a woman is. I promise you that was intentional. This whole thing was scripted out. You never hear women's suffrage referred to as just suffrage. The women's suffrage movement is called the women's suffrage movement, except now that the Democrats have completely sold women down the river and deny that women even exist as a category of being, so now they got to change it to suffrage. Shows you how radical that revolution has become. Then he gets to the meat of his speech. He says, you conservatives, it's not just that we disagree. It's not just that you want to take our country in a bad place. It's not just, even to use Obama's rhetoric, the conservatives are going to drive America off a cliff. No, they're saying the conservatives, by their very presence, by their very existence here and voicing their political views, pose an existential threat to the country.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans.
Okay, so there he contradicts himself, right? He says, listen, the MAGA Republicans, they're the threat. But they're not the majority of Republicans. I've worked with them. And first of all, if you just look at the polls, yes, they are. The Never Trump movement barely exists. It is statistically not relevant at all. It's pretty much just Bill Kristol and a handful of his friends that come over for tea to whine about the last 7 years of conservative politics. But the vast majority of Republicans have at some point in some way supported Donald Trump. They are MAGA Republicans. He's doing this because he doesn't want to come right out and say half the country is evil, but that is what he's saying. And then he contradicts himself at the end when he says, look, he starts out, these MAGA Republicans, they're not the majority of Republicans, they're not the mainstream, but they also dominate the Republican Party and control the direction of the party. I don't think so. You can't have it both ways. Right now, go to goodranchers.com/Knowles. Regardless of what this administration calls a recession, Americans are worried. Food and gas prices are higher than they've ever been, certainly in my lifetime, I think just ever, which is why I'm so grateful for my favorite meat delivery service, Good Ranchers. While grocery store meat prices continue to rise, Good Ranchers' inflation-proof model locks in your price the day you subscribe for the life of your subscription. So I've got to just pause it there for a second because it seems unbelievable. Yes, not only are you getting extremely inexpensive, very, very high-quality meat, but when you subscribe, you just lock in that price forever, for the whole length of the subscription. By the way, you can pause your subscription for up to 90 days or cancel anytime you want. You're not going to want to. You're going to want to keep it. 100% American meat, born, raised, and harvested in the U.S., goes right to your door. Their beef is prime or upper choice, the two highest grades, superior steakhouse quality. I just absolutely love these guys. Right now, when you go to goodranchers.com/Knowles, use code Knowles, Knowles at checkout, you will get $30 off plus free shipping. You can subscribe to lock in your price and recession-proof your meals for life. That's goodranchers.com/Knowles. Use code Knowles at checkout. And then in this extremely gloomy, ominous speech with the red and the screaming and he almost slips into a Prussian accent while he's giving it, he says that we need to be optimistic.
Even in this moment, with all the challenges we face, I give you my word as a Biden, I've never been more optimistic about America's future. Not because of me, but because of who you are. We're going to end cancer as we know it. Mark my words.
All nature is but art unknown to thee, all chance direction which thou canst not see. After this doom and gloom, fire and brimstone, we are going to come for you, our political opponent's speech. He says, but we need to be optimistic. And as he says optimistic, right on cue, you hear a siren in the background. because the very structure of reality will not tolerate that kind of preposterous, disingenuous, hypocritical lie from Joe Biden. Doom and gloom and pessimism, but we need to be optimistic. Woo, woo. Things aren't looking too optimistic, Joe. Woo, woo. And he ends the speech on what I think was people would call it a gaffe. I would call it a Freudian slip.
The ages still to come will say, we, all of us here, we kept the faith. We preserved democracy. We heeded our worst. We heeded not our worst instincts, but our better angels.
There it is. We heeded our worst instincts. Was I not supposed to? Oh, no, sorry, I got confused. We heeded not our worst instincts. There it is. A Freudian slip where you say one thing but mean your mother. So that was the Biden speech, okay? Red, screaming, gesticulations, half the country's evil and illegitimate. Now, coincidentally, Donald Trump just gave his first public speech since the raid on Mar-a-Lago, since the Biden administration raided Biden's predecessor and chief political rival. Totally unprecedented. So banana republic kind of stuff. And so Donald Trump gets out there and he gives his speech to his conservative supporters. Take a listen, compare and contrast.
Fetterman may dress like a teenager getting high in his parents' basement, but he's a raging lunatic hell-bent on springing hardened criminals out of jail in the middle of the worst crime wave in Pennsylvania history.
Hilarious. The whole speech was hilarious. Notice Donald Trump's red, white, and blue everywhere. Joe Biden's just red everywhere. Dark red. Donald Trump's red, white, and blue everywhere. Joe Biden's very dark, ominous. Donald Trump's big, smiley, bright lights. Joe Biden's everyone yelling and angry and fear half this country's a threat to democracy. Donald Trump's, yeah, you see this Fetterman guy? He's totally nuts. We shouldn't vote for him. You should vote for the other guy because Fetterman, he's going to be a bad politician. Which one of those two speeches is more in line with the American tradition? The Biden Hall putsch or Donald Trump giving a campaign rally? Which one of those two speeches seems like the threat to democracy? Which of those two speeches seems on the lighter side of the battle for the American soul? It's not even a question. And Trump is smart here. He's not taking the bait in this obvious provocation for political violence. He's just laughing his way to November. He's saying, look, we might have the forces arrayed against us. All right, we might have a lot of stuff to take on, not just the Democrats, but the whole deep state and the whole fetid, swampy establishment. But we're just going to keep our chins up. We're going to keep doing the right thing. We're going to hug that American flag. Picture those two images. Biden screaming, yelling, red all around him. Donald Trump hugging the American flag, kissing the American flag at that speech during his presidency. You got those two images. Trump says we're going to do that. That's really going to be the way we keep the faith. That's going to be the way. If we are to keep our democracy, that's how we're going to do it. I'm so glad you liked that clip. Now, what? Hold up. Wait. What? Huh? You got to ring that bell. Subscribe. Get all the notifications. That way, we'll not only have we hit 1 million subscribers, we're going to hit 1 trillion. Make sure you do it now. We'll see you next time.